So today I'm so excited to welcome Jane Macky, who is doing great work helping families who are struggling with substance use. So let me tell you a little bit about Jane. Jane is the CEO and founder of We the Village. She graduated with a master's in mental health counseling in 2022 and holds a BA in philosophy and psychology from Yale University. In her first job out of college in New York City, her eyes were open to the struggles of addiction through a colleague and now friend, her husband. This chronic issue drew her attention and focused her life's purpose. She designed a program from personal experience paired with the leading evidence-based approach and clinical expertise while securing multiple government awards and millions of dollars from the National Institute of Drug Abuse to prove the efficacy of their program through clinical trials and advanced its viability. The product is now offered direct to consumer and funded through the state of Colorado. So welcome, Jane.
Thanks for having me, Cathy. It's great to be here.
Really nice to see people doing this work. So can you share, I shared it briefly, but can you share a little bit about your background and how you came to work in the addiction field?
Yes. Yeah. So I am from New Zealand originally. I came to the US for college. I had my sights set on New York City after college, was excited to be here. Got a job in marketing, which was sort of my version of translating my philosophy psychology degree into understanding consumers. And while I was working there, it was a pretty fast-paced company. We were coming right out of the recession in 2009, and getting that entry-level job was trying to prove myself, working long hours, and it was during that first sort of job position that I started to see the effect of addiction in one of my colleagues and really close friends at that point. So while we were creating these, the first sort of mobile apps, it was a digital agency, mobile apps for the likes of Kraft Foods and Victoria's Secret and these big sort of brands, I'm going online to try and figure out how to help this friend of mine and not finding answers. Really what I found were sort of treatment centers. And at that point, I couldn't talk to this friend. I didn't even know like the words or what my role could be. And he certainly wasn't ready or willing to go to treatment. So that was sort of the kernel. And I think just, having that interest in sort of human psychology and behavior, I found it really fascinating. Like, why was this amazing, really intelligent person struggling with addiction? And I think that was also the first time I saw that addiction wasn't just like this moral failing of, a person out on the street and like not really understanding how they got there, and started to see that could end up happening to my friend if he continue down this path. So that was, the kernel of why I got into this. And it was through this like just ravenous search to try and figure out answers and how to help him that I eventually found craft. And I think like many people that eventually find craft, they're like, why did I not find this sooner? I went to Al-Anon meetings and to a therapist, and what I kind of got there was, a therapist like more generally like how to look after myself, which was helpful, but it was not what I was looking for at the time. And then the Al-Anon, oftentimes people would sort of say to me, why are you even here? Like, this person isn't blood related. You should just get out. Why do you care? And I understood like it was coming from a good place, but for me, I was just looking for, how do I help this person? And no one else is sort of stepping in to do anything, and what could I do? So yeah, fast forward through this loved one's recovery. This man is now my husband. We just had a child together. He's been in recovery for many years now. We began and sort of set out to create We the Village, and yeah, try to get that information and that good quality sort of evidence-based information to families who need it. I think we share that passion much sooner, and would love to see that, you know, the first port of call one day, hopefully, with all the work that we're both doing.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's so interesting how people find their way, and yeah, it just takes a loved one. I mean, the same with me. It was a loved one, you know, who kind of got me into this. So for people that don't know about craft and community reinforcement and family training, can you just give a brief overview? What is it and how does it help families?
Yeah, so craft is a behavioral change approach. It's sort of, I like a way that I would describe it is kind of like a therapy like CBT, many people have heard of, or DBT, a therapy that therapists or counselors can learn in school and in practice. Um, and it is based on the premise. Well, it was developed out of CRA, which is Community Reinforcement Approach, and that sort of came first. That was developed by Nate Azrin. Dr. Robert Myers was at that time working with Nate Azrin, and what he saw was with CRA, what you're trying to do is get the person struggling with substance use to shift their behavior towards more positive, healthy behaviors and decrease sort of harmful using behaviors. What Dr. Robert Myers found was that as they went into this one sort of piece of the CRA protocol, which was a family session, that the family members were more motivated, that they were the ones like that were, you know, going to show up, and that those were really effective sessions. And so he took it on himself to start thinking about how do we actually work with family members to use their motivation and the influence they clearly have as just by nature of being in relationship with this person. So craft is a set of protocols that therapists and counselors can learn, but also what's amazing is peers can learn. And I learned it as a peer. I am now also able to practice as a counselor as well. But a lot of amazing practitioners in craft are peers that have come to, you know, find it to be useful and get trained themselves. And what I love about it is that it really is sort of a set of protocols that have been studied in multiple clinical trials and proven really effective at getting a loved one into treatment. We're now also seeing sort of additional sort of findings, helps the loved one themselves feel better. And really the sort of underlying principles are to, one, that a family member can help and that they can drive positive change with their loved one just by being connected, often through communication, so communication skills, and then reinforcing those positive behaviors and sort of removing reinforcement from negative or harmful substance using or substance adjacent behaviors to sort of over time shift the behavior towards more sobriety and more helpful positive behaviors. And I think, yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, but it really consistently has been proven to be really effective. And this work is not easy. I wouldn't do it if I didn't see the results all the time. So yeah.
Thank you for
Craft
that.
in a nutshell.
I know. And every time for me too, and every time I hear someone explain it, I think, oh, I learn a little bit more, you know, I learn a little bit. So it is. Yeah, no, I agree. It's the key too, I think, is that therapists and clinicians can use it, but also everyone can learn it. I think it's easy to learn. It's not so easy to always put into place. I think it does take practice. We have to work at it and be motivated to try. But I too, I've seen a lot of families come back and say, oh my gosh, you know, my child's really starting to turn around. So thank you
That's
for
what
that.
we all the sort of coaches that work with us and myself included, we always sort of say that we are constantly practicing it as well. It's like if I'm tired, if I have had a bad day, like my positive communication is going to be much worse, you know, or if I kind of just let myself get frustrated. It's always helpful to come back to, and I I think it can be helpful beyond addiction as well. But yeah, it's really effective in the addiction space.
No, absolutely. And even with my 3 kids who are doing well now, I find myself, I'll approach thinking about something I want to say to them, and I'm back it up. Okay. And I'll pull in some of those craft strategies. And I think it really helps. I think it's helpful for anyone. So you have started an amazing course, which I've gone through. It's wonderful. We the Village. So can you tell us about that? How does it help families? What's that all about? So families can know about that.
Yeah, so our core sort of goal at the heart of all of this is we would love for families that are loving someone through substance use problems or disorder to have access to craft, and ultimately, eventually, that be the first sort of place you go to find craft. So the way that we thought about it, and sort of with our background in digital, was, why isn't this online? And I think with sort of this principle of there is sort of information that we just need to get across to people. Like, we just want you to learn the principles in craft. So we do that through video content. Like you said, because it is a behavioral change approach, and we're looking for family members to change their behavior to see a resultant change in their loved one, that practice is really important. So if I don't practice my communication skills, I'm never going to change them. So then we have sort of worksheets and prompts to start applying the skill from the video to your specific situation, because craft really is like a fundamental principles. So we always want to be tailoring it to the individual and their relationship. And then we have little knowledge quizzes. It's a weekly course curriculum. So there's one skill a week for 12 weeks. And our goal with it is that by the end of the 12 weeks, you have your toolkit that you can walk through recovery for however long it takes, because we know some people, or many people, I think the stat is 2 and 3, on average, people see a loved one get into treatment if that's a goal within the 12 weeks. But we also know that there are a ton of people that it can take years, or there can be multiple sort of times going through treatment or recovery, or they may not go into treatment. They may have more alternative sort of modality of helping them through recovery. So yeah, the first piece is this online course, and like I said, the goal really is about taking the sort of informational piece of it online, the repeatable piece, and increasing access by having it online. And then the second piece is that we also have options for adding group coaching or individual coaching alongside. So that's where then you would also meet weekly as you go through each skill with a coach to start that process of applying the skill to your situation. That can look like role playing, communications, because communication really is at the heart of pretty much all of the craft sort of techniques, and brainstorming. Because I think a lot of us, myself included, in the past, would get really stuck, when you keep sort of trying the same thing, and you feel like you've tried everything and you're just not able to sort of think of new ideas. And so that can be a really great way we've seen, either in the group setting where you're hearing from other people in similar situations, the ways that they're sort of breaking through and having different ideas to try with their loved ones, and or individually with that coach to brainstorm and sort of get unstuck.
Jane, thank you for that. No, the program is great. I've gone through it. It's very logically laid out and very helpful. And I really like the way you've organized it. So I encourage people to definitely check it out. So also, you are doing a study, and if you can tell me more about that, the Family Support Research Study funded by the National Institute of Drug Abuse, NIDA. So can you tell us about that, and what if you've learned some things, if you have some results from that, or what you're seeing?
Yeah. So We feel really lucky to have been able to partner with NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse. Their goals, and so we are part of their Small Business Innovation Research program, and their goals align really well with what we're trying to do and sort of where we set out from the beginning. So this idea that we have this research-backed, evidence-based approach, craft, that's been studied in over 10 sort of randomized clinical trials, which means that there's a control condition, so they can see how the craft perform versus a different modality. For example, it's often been studied against interventions, confrontational interventions, or Lara and Al-Anon, and that's where we get the sort of data points about general sort of craft outcomes with treatment entry and that sort of thing. But so what was really important to us was, okay, so we're saying that we're bringing craft online, but like, are we really? And does it work? Like, can people get results? And I think this sort of stemmed out of when we were looking for options for treatment, just feeling like it was really hard to trust or know what we were buying effectively, and often, you know, addiction treatments are so expensive, and sort of just trying to have like a really transparent option for people that, hey, if you sign up for this, here's some idea of what you could get out of it. So this program with NIDA, they fund product development and research sort of testing. So what that allowed us as a very small sort of entity to do was to take what we'd been doing in practice, put some funding behind, you know, develop the videos, the product as a minimal sort of version of it, and then actually put it in front of people and have some funding to have people go through it for free and get a research team to support us through, you know, don't have a research background. I know a lot about it now, but actually sort of have experts help us there. It also allowed us to partner directly with Dr. Robert Myers, who created Craft, and some of his research team and coaches, which was, you know, fundamental to also our mission of making sure that it's to, you know, as much to Craft to a T as possible. And so in 2020, we were able to put the product in front of 45 participants. We had 2 conditions that received craft, so 15 people in each of those groups would get the online curriculum, and they'd also get either group coaching or individual coaching. And then our comparison condition was our online community, which is structured around a question and answer sort of format and moderated by peers. And through that, we learned that the group condition actually outperformed the individual condition slightly. But so interesting, I really thought you needed to work one-on-one with a practitioner to get that skill advancement. But I think what we didn't count on was that feedback from peers and that feeling of being able to feel less alone and just hear and see craft work through other people. So sometimes we'd have a group start and, you know, someone come in and say, this is never going to work, you know, for whatever reason, like I've tried everything or whatever it might be. They're feeling really, really stuck and just like nothing's going to work for them and really skeptical. And then, you know, inevitably there'd be someone that would have a success at some point and they'd say, you know, I tried this communication thing and it worked. And yeah, it just was this sort of beautiful sort of synergy. And we were able to see within 12 weeks, 77% of people with a loved one get into a new treatment in the group condition. And in the individual, it was around 73%. And then in the control, it was 40%. So that also told us that we were onto something, that we were seeing similar results to how craft has performed in previous clinical trials. So that was very validating for us. And I think, you know, to be able to continue to share the offering. Now we, because of the results in that study, are doing a larger scale. So we're able to offer it for free to over 212 family members. This time we're just focusing on the group craft and with the control of our community condition. And we are actually just into our last cohort for that. So people are still able to sign up for a limited time because once we get to the end of that, funding runs out to offer it for free. And so we will be, as per usual, offering it for people to purchase. I think ultimately down the road, we'd love to have it funded federally, statewide, through insurance. You know, we're sort of exploring all those sort of options, and right now it is available and funded through the Colorado Office of Behavioral Health. So in Colorado, people can access it for free as well. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Oh, wonderful work. And it's really great to see that you're doing these studies, because I know there's been studies done before, but some of them are a few decades back, you know, so it's nice to see that you're doing these now currently, and interesting too about the group versus the individual. That is interesting. But I think too, parents, I mainly just work with parents. I know you work with all family members, but I do think parents love, you know, parents have so much wisdom to share with each other too, you know, and I'm family members, I'm sure do too. So things come out that from their experience that can be really helpful. So, oh, good. That's wonderful.
I'll mention one other thing actually that I think is really interesting before I forget, is what we're also looking at is treatment retention. So I think getting a loved one into treatment is one thing, right? And that can look like many different kinds of things. It doesn't just have to be rehab, of course, but also then we wanted to know, would they stay in treatment? And so we're measuring that specifically when it comes to like opioid use. We know that they're extremely effective sort of medications, and in our pilot we saw if the family member's loved one was in a treatment at the beginning, they were also in treatment at the end in the Kraft conditions 100% of the time. Very small sample for that first study, but we're looking at that on a larger scale as well. And also I think Kraft has, you know, some data around like the mental health of the family member. You know, we know it can be traumatic what we go through, and obviously stressful, and there's anxiety, depression, and those sort of things that family members can experience. And we're in the larger study that we're doing now, we're able to study those things more and sort of get more data towards, you know, what do those outcomes look like, and how helpful can we see Kraft being towards those. So I think that'll be really interesting when we get to the data analysis part.
Great. Good for you. I'm so glad you're doing this and really getting the research done and the evidence out there. So that's great. So Jane, as you know, people, you know, are continuing to struggle. Families are continuing to struggle. So what would you like to see in the future going forward? You mentioned earlier that, you know, it took you a while to find Kraft, took me a while to find Kraft. What would you like to see happen? You know, maybe in our country or just communities, whatever makes sense.
Yeah, I want every family loving someone through addiction to have access to Kraft at the highest fidelity, because we know it works and because we know it can work for families. And I think, you know, that means having access to it at a high fidelity. Also, a culture sort of change, knowing that we as family members can play a really important and helpful role when our loved one is struggling. We know that 46% of Americans are loving someone struggling with a substance use disorder right now. So it's way more common than you might think if you're somebody that hasn't been in that situation yet. So knowing that it's common, people can and do recover. It can look different for everyone. But yeah, I would love them to know about Kraft. I think it feels like a crime to me that we have this amazing tool, and and people need it. You know, so many people need it, and it's just not out there enough. And we suffer a lot more because we don't have access to it. We don't think we can help. We think that we're bad for loving someone in addiction. And yeah, it doesn't have to be that way.
Great points. And I know parents are still, and family members too, are still, given that message initially, especially when you're first trying to find out answers. Many times people are given that message to let go, and there's nothing you can do and all of that. And it does take a while. So it would be
And
nice.
I think craft is so interesting because there's also data points around like that the family member that learns craft feels better regardless of the outcome with their loved one. And I think, obviously we all want the loved one struggling to get better, to get healthy and sort of engage in a full life. And in many cases they do, if we give them long enough, depending on their timeline. But yeah, I think it's also really interesting to see that we can just feel a lot better. We feel more empowered in the situation. We feel like we know when to step in, when to not step in. And I love that aspect of it as well. And I think I wish that for all people loving someone struggling with addiction.
Absolutely. Great point. So Jane, how can people learn more about your program? Where can they find, where would you like to send them?
Yes. So we are accessible, findable at www.wethevillage.co. We have a website that's a work in progress, so bear with us, but it has all the sort of buttons to link you off to the right places. So to our courses and coaching, to our community question and answer forum, and also to our research studies. I will mention that, we have this current study that offers 12 weeks of free support for a family member loving someone through addiction. And you can check if you're eligible and go through the whole enrollment process online if you are via that website. And then we do have one other research study that's running currently and will be going into the future as well. And will be a new sort of product line that we're offering in the fall 2023, whenever you're watching this, but is also to train through certification in craft. And so that has been developed with Dr. Robert Myers, creator of Craft, and is going through clinical trials funded by NIDA as well at the moment. And as we sort of mentioned earlier, like anyone can learn to do craft as a practitioner, and a lot of people who have used it with their loved ones as a family member loving someone through it, just like myself, can learn it and be really effective at sharing craft. And so yeah, we're really looking forward to just bringing craft awareness, whether it's to family members and or professionals as well.
Wonderful. And I will have the links to all this information below the video and also on my blog post as well. You'll see it there. So you can just click and go right to Jane's site. Thank you so much for stopping by, and thank you for the work you're doing. I appreciate that, and the research you're doing as well too. That's very interesting, and can't wait to learn more as you progress with that. So Jane, thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, we can't wait to see the data of these most recent studies and share them more broadly and share them with you as well. And I want to say thank you for having me on today, for sharing with the village and your support. And thank you also for being in this space and sharing craft, because I don't think any one organization or one person can really get it out there as much as it needs to be. And I think everyone, has different ways of sharing information, and I know you have a loyal following. And so thank you for being a like-minded person in this space, helping to get it out there.
Absolutely. No, it takes a village, and it's a wonderful group, I think, of us trying to promote this. And it just, to me, it makes so much sense. So yeah, it always has. Thank you.
Yeah.